Around 2017, I had what most people would call an awakening, an epiphany, if you will. I was at work, it was about 3 a.m. in the morning, and this question popped into my mind. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And I was like, so who was there to hear God say these things? That was the question that arrested me. I was alone, I was doing the graveyard shift, and it just popped in my head. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. I said, but who was there to hear God speak? How did that come to be in the Bible? And thus started my inquiry into the things that I believed. Because for the most part, you're born into a family, and that family has a set of beliefs. You're born into a village or a community, and that community has a set of beliefs. And they impart those beliefs onto you, and you take them onto your own, and you just run with it, and that becomes a part of your default programming. And you never stop to question why you believe what you believe. And so that was my journey, the beginning of my journey. Of course, that took me down to a rabbit hole that eventually led to my disillusionment with religion, and also my research took me into the looking at CERN and the demiurge. And I had an unfortunate spiritual encounter when I started to look into those things, so I stopped. So I couldn't tell you really and truly what my um, considered opinion is on CERN or the demiurge, because I just couldn't combat the forces that I encountered. Having said that, 2020 came and there was this pandemic. Of course, in the beginning, I did what I was told: stay home, social distance, wear the mask, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And then, of course, after the initial shock wore off, the narrative and the messaging didn't make sense to me. So, of course, again, I started questioning things. I started reading the actual documents that they were publishing, and I found out, wait a minute, what they're saying, what they have in the published document, is not what they're telling us on TV. A lot of people don't know this because, of course, they would just watch the news or watch, the press conferences or watch these briefings and just take it as read that, what they are being told is correct. But the actual published documents, if you actually read them, they would give you some information that is not 100% adding up to what the press conferences and the press briefings were about. So, of course, I started speaking out on social media. For the first time, I turned my camera on and was basically talking to myself, and it felt so weird. I'm like, how do people do this? Like you're literally talking to yourself, because if you turn the camera on, you have to talk, and there's no one there. So essentially, you're talking to yourself. So it was a bit of an adjustment for me. It was super weird, but I did anyway. Of course, I get long-winded in my process, in my videos, and so I would post them, and I would see people commenting and such, and that led me now to create a YouTube channel. So I would create a YouTube channel, and I'd post, because at the time on Instagram you could not post more than 10 minutes, I think, because Instagram was like Instagram, right? It was just posting instant pictures and maybe 30-second videos and stuff. So they weren't allowing for long form content. So I had to create a YouTube channel and post the videos on the YouTube channel. And of course, I got into researching. So I did a lot of research looking at the scientific papers and stuff like that. And it led me to some past events like 9/11, the Gulf of Tonkin, Operation Northwood, MK Ultra, and a bunch of other stuff. And there was one seminal paper that I reviewed, um, which was done by the CDC. The research was led by Dr. Shimabukuro, and it had to deal with pregnant persons and the vaccines. And of course, they found no safety signals. But when I looked at the research, I was like, they're lying. The data, the raw data in the actual article is suggesting otherwise. They used the wrong denominator, everything. So I called it out. And shortly after that, a team of scientists from Canada, I think, did the same thing, and they wrote to the editors of the New England Journal of Medicine and said this information is not correct. And so they didn't retract the paper, which was unfortunate, but they wrote something to say, yeah, we acknowledge that we used the wrong denominator, but the findings still stand. Right? So, okay, fine, no problem. So I get to know, start to understand propaganda and information warfare. And so I started looking at what are the kinds of psychological tactics that governments use, because unfortunately what a lot of people don't know is that your government employ psychological warfare tactics against you. If the government wants to pass a law, they bomb the Twin Towers. Patriot Act. If the government want to take your guns, they orchestrate mass shootings. And then they take the I think it's the Second Amendment. People don't understand, like, this is what they do. Whatever it is that they know that the ordinary citizen is not going to agree with, they manufacture a situation that now force people to call for the very thing that they would have refused in the first place. So I did a whole series. I didn't finish it. I think there were supposed to be 12 videos, and I did about 9, because typically when you are talking about important stuff, it's not entertaining, it's boring, and it's long form content. It's about anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half, and nobody wants to sit and listen to anything that is not 10 to 30 seconds, because they have manufactured this attention economy where people have the attention span of a goldfish. If it is not short, I'm not watching that shit. I'm just gonna scroll past, because there's no way I'm gonna sit down and listen to somebody talk for 10 minutes or 45 minutes or 30 minutes, regardless of how, critically important the information may be. So of course, didn't get a lot of views, so I kind of got discouraged and distracted, and I stopped at video number 8 or 10, I don't remember. But the series is still on YouTube. It goes into false flag events, it goes into propaganda, it goes into the Hegelian dialectic, it goes into the red herring, it goes into limited hangout, and there are some others. I can't recall all of them off the top of my head. Right? Why did I make the video? Because when I was doing the research and I was looking at what the world leaders were saying, I was looking at what was happening during COVID, the coordination across the globe, with every country basically touting the same narrative, which was unprecedented. I mean, these people can't agree on anything, but during the pandemic, they all were on one accord. And as much as I'd like to think that, well, they were just concerned for the safety and the well-being of citizens, no, they're not. It was a test to see how they can get everybody on the same page on a global level. A kind of test to see if the world is ready to have a one world government, or a new world order has been the conspiracy theory for a number of years now. That was the purpose and the objective of that pandemic in 2030 that lasted for 2020 that lasted for 3 years. So, of course, I began looking into Agenda 2030, Agenda 21, and researching the World Economic Forum, listening to a lot of the videos that they were posting, and everybody must have seen that famous one, "You will own nothing and you'll be happy." And it's moving towards this quote-unquote fourth industrial revolution, a technocratic age where the world, not countries, the world is ruled by a technocratic elite. And so the question was, how do they plan to do this? Like, how are they going to get, because, how are they going to get people to buy into this new world order marching into 2030? Because all of this is supposed to culminate, it's supposed to reach a crescendo by 2030. And I recognized, but they've been doing it all along. Propaganda, false flag events, utilizing psychological warfare manipulation tactics against the populace. They've always done it. And so, of course, one of the what stood out to me among all of the sayings and the stuff was when Klaus Schwab, who is the founder of the World Economic Forum. I think he recently resigned, I think last year. He said in one of those many meetings, because they're always having these meetings every year in Davos, Switzerland, and he said that we must prepare for an angrier world. Like, how the hell does he know that? Like, like, what is he talking about? But then if you go back to empires in the past, they all fell. The Ottoman, the Roman Empire, the French Revolution, they all fell. And why did they fall? Because over time they became stagnant and rotten to the core. And all the wealth in those empires was being funneled to the top. So the rich were having a ball and having a good time, and the rest of the people were hungry. And I think in France there's this famous saying where they're like, let them eat cake. And that was the straw that broke the camel back. And so they killed the nobles or whatever. I'm not too researched on the French Revolution, but just giving you a general idea of what is being put out there in the public space with respect to the French Revolution. And so there's also this idea that every 200 years there's a turning, meaning society reaches a point where it crashes and burns. And they're saying that we are at the fourth turning. So this is why there is this push towards the fourth industrial revolution, the Agenda 2030 we see coming out in force, because they want to manage and control the collapse of society so that when the dust settles, when the smoke clears, they are still okay, they still have their wealth, they still have their riches, they're unscathed, while the rest of us have to deal with the fallout. So we saw where they are getting their ducks in a row, they're getting the pieces together, the war in Ukraine, Israel and Palestine, and the growing discontent in the United States of America, left versus right, Democrat versus Republican. And we are now seeing where the UK, I think, is the government is deliberately trying to aggravate the people by coming up with these draconian, stupid laws. They are arresting old people for terrorism. They are arresting people in wheelchair for terrorism. They are arresting people for posting on social media. And the question, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? We saw recently where there was unrest in Nepal and the government was essentially overthrown. The politicians had to flee. The parliament was set ablaze. I think we're seeing unrest in France as well, because the new prime minister, I don't know, I think Macron stepped down and there's a new prime minister, and then he decided to cut about $44 billion in the budget, and that just, set things off. So there is a lot of unrest going on. I think somewhere in Europe, or was it France? Somewhere in Europe, there is this narrative, I haven't verified, but they're saying that, the government is telling the hospitals to prepare for war. So by March 2026, they're expecting that there's going to be some world war, or World War III is going to be kicked off, or whatever the case might be. And it's like, how the hell do they know that? You know what I mean? So, why am I telling you all of this? You will have seen that Charlie Kirk, who is an influencer, I think he had the Charlie Kirk show. He's the founder of Turning Point USA, and he was basically going around on college campuses debating students. And of course, as with all things in America, people are just polarized, divided, like fundamentally for no reason. There is just no nuance, there's no middle ground, there's no nothing. You're either left or right, conservative or liberal, Democrat or Republican. You're never an American citizen. And so, people listen to your views and your opinions and put you in one of the boxes. Even if you don't identify with any of the boxes, they just, they put you in one anyway, because that's how they function, that's how they operate. So he was at a speaking event in Utah. I think it's some university. I don't recall which university. And while he was speaking, he was being asked a question about gun violence and mass shooting. I think somebody asked him if he knew how many mass shootings there were in the US since, I don't know. And he said, too many. And right after he said that, he was shot in the neck and he was rushed to hospital, and he subsequently, we understand, died. Now, when you look on social media, there, specifically TikTok, there are a lot of people who are rejoicing. I'm glad he's dead. Oh well, and they keep showing this one clip of him saying that, unfortunately, there has to be some gun deaths. I'm paraphrasing here, I don't recall exactly. He was saying there has to be some gun deaths in order to protect the other rights under the Constitution. So he was for the Second Amendment. He believed that people had a right to bear arms. And so there are all these people who are rejoicing that he died. They were saying he was a horrible human being. I don't understand. I think what you do, right, is far more in what you call it, is far more important than what you say. Because someone could say, for instance, I love you, but their action suggests otherwise. And so it's the action that counts and not the words. Because people can say one thing and do the complete opposite. Moreover, he was a social media personality. And we all know and understand that when you're in the social media space, there are things that you have to do. There's a kind of theater that you have to perform. Unfortunately, I am not very good at pretending, so clearly I don't do well on social media because you have to entertain people. And I'm not here to entertain, I'm here to inform. But for people who are making the money and they see the millions coming in, you're making $400,000 a month, off of a YouTube video, then you become lost in the sauce. It now becomes about the money and not the message. And of course, people will say stuff that are controversial that they know are going to trigger people because you're going to hate watch. If I come on and I say something triggering, it's going to get shared, it's going to go viral, and then people are going to hate you, but you're going to be making money off of that hate. That is how the algorithm is set up, and a lot of people capitalize on appealing to emotion, whether it's negative or positive. So we have to, when we see somebody in the social media space, especially someone who makes a living off of creating content, we have to take what they say, we have to take what they do with a grain of salt, because more often than not, they are just trying to capitalize on the algorithm. They're just trying to build a momentum. They're just trying to create a viral moment so that they can make some money. So we have to understand that there's a certain theater, a certain performance, a certain persona that one takes on when they're in the social media space in order to beat the algorithm, in order to be the video that everyone sees, in order to create a quote-unquote viral moment. We have to take that into consideration. So we can't take for granted that just because someone is saying something that they actually believe it. We can't take that for granted. Especially someone who is, if it's a politician who is giving a press conference, that's different. But if it's somebody who's sitting in front of a camera having a podcast on YouTube or wherever, whichever social media platform, and they're talking, you gotta take because if that's how they make their living, if they don't have a job that pays the bill, and what pays the bill is social media, you can't really take them serious. So persons were saying that he said some really, I want to say, unfortunate things. And as a result of what he was saying, because of course he was going around the universities and debating students, right? And of course, debates, a lot of people mistake debates for intellectual discourse to arrive at truth. And I mean objective truth, not my truth, your truth, their truth, but the truth. That is not what debate is about. A debate, the objective of a debate is to win an argument, to persuade your opponent that you are right and they are wrong. It has nothing to do with an intellectual inquiry on a particular subject matter to arrive at the truth. It can have that effect, but the objective is to win the argument. And so if I go into a situation where I am hoping to win, I'm hoping to come out victorious, then of course I am not interested in facts or the truth, because whenever you hit me with facts, I'm going to find some way to weave my way around it and put and steer the narrative back in my favor. That is what you do in a debate, and people don't seem to understand that, because you're trying to change someone's mind. You're not trying to arrive at the truth. Unfortunately, in the social media space, we find ourselves more often than not in echo chambers. I myself have come to the conclusion as well that I am in an echo chamber, because I have not found anyone to challenge me. Like they have a fundamentally different view from what I have. Now, I could delude myself and say, well, maybe if you're right, you're just right. And if they're sensible enough, they will also know that you're right. And so they're agreeing with you, not because you're in an echo chamber, but because what you're saying is true. But still, I'd like to have someone challenge my philosophy, challenge my belief, because that is, if it doesn't stand to scrutiny, if it has never been scrutinized, then how do you know that what you believe or what you're saying is actually true? I have one friend from Canada, he does that sometimes. Brandon will come up with, I'll say something and he'll go off on a whole different tangent. And I now have to connect with my higher self, like literally, in order to, because I have the feel, because when you're, I don't know about anybody else, but when you're right about something, it resonates at a deeper level. So you may not be able to explain to someone why you know you're right, but you just know. And so in order to get the wisdom to break apart my philosophy or what I am saying, I have to dig deeper into self. I have to connect with my higher self to kind of like get that clarity to articulate clearly, effectively, and in a way that the other person can understand why I believe what I believe. And I love those conversations because I am the kind of person where if I believe something and somebody comes with something that contradicts what I believe and it debunks, because you can have something that is on the face of it appears to be contradictory, but it's just bullshit, right? But if it is the genuine article, I will be like, oh well, why the hell did I believe that? You know, that's some bullshit. You're actually right. I am not one who hold on to anything. I'm not one who needs to be right all the time. I must be right, blah, blah, blah. No, I am interested in the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And where I see truth, where I hear truth, where I find truth, I will always accept it. And I will abandon whatever belief I had before that is no longer representative of objective reality. That's just me. I know 99% of people are not like that. They're not going to just abandon what they believe to be true. They're going to fight you tooth and nail, sometimes to the death, to hold on to their misconceptions. So, of course, I would love to be challenged or like to be challenged, but more often than not, I end up saying something, somebody counteracts, and then I kind of like pick apart their argument and show them why it doesn't work and why my argument is more plausible, and they will like, oh, that actually makes sense, da 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 da. And then, I mean, I don't know. Of course, it perhaps speaks to their level of intellect. Because if you're wrong, why are you fighting? Why would you can't just play devil's advocate for the sake of playing devil's advocate. It has to be that you're trying to arrive at some truth. And so I haven't found anyone who's kind of like steadfastly holding on to what they believe, even though it is wrong. So and they're challenging my perspective. So I will now have to dig deep to figure out if what I believe is actually it actually makes sense. So that is one of the, so I feel like I'm kind of in an echo chamber and I have to kind of like be cognizant of that. So I kind of play devil's advocate in my mind too. I am challenging. So as I am speaking and I'm holding on to something, there's this second and third conversation happening in my head where I am challenging it as well to make sure that I'm not talking crap. Right? And so I try to hold myself accountable in my utterances. As I'm uttering something, as I am saying something, there's still a conversation going on in my mind about what I am saying as I am saying it, to kind of like fact check, vet, to make sure that at the very least there is some level of scrutiny that is happening and I'm not just mouthing off. So what Americans don't understand, so they're glorifying Charlie. It's there was a guy going around asking people what they think about Charlie Kirk's death, and they were like, they're glad he's dead. What can I say? What can I say, girl? And they found
and killed. How do you feel?
Happy. Goodbye.
Wow. That Charlie Kirk just got shot and killed.
That's good.
Did you see that Charlie Kirk got shot and killed today?
Yes, I did.
How do you feel about that?
I don't really have any feelings about it.
Charlie Kirk got shot and killed today. We're just getting people's opinions. How do you feel about that?
Girl, someone had to do it. And that's how I feel at this point in time. But
I appreciate your honesty. I truly do. So you said someone had to do it.
Yes.
Try not to get all pulled up into that, but he was a misogynist. He was a disgusting person with disgusting beliefs.
So if you had a magical wand, a magical button that you could press and keep him from being assassinated, Would you press that?
No.
There is a lot to unpack from the shooting. I'm going to put these forward as hypotheses, right? Suppositions, if you will. In order for the American empire to fall, because it must fall to make way for the global government that is set up for 2030. There is this road to 2030 where they're moving towards a world police and a one world government run by a group of technocrats. Right? They have said as much, so this is not speculation, this is not conspiracy theory, like they've literally said it. Right? But in order for you to have a one world government, America has to fall. It has to. There's no way America can stand and you bring in a new world order. That's not going to happen. How can you get America to fall if everybody owns a gun? If all the citizens in America can just go walk into a gun store and buy a gun, how are you going to topple that empire? Because you do so through brute force. People are not going to just roll over and die. They're not going to do that. So you have to take the guns. That is the first thing you need to do. And Americans don't understand that. And so when they go to the Charlie Kirk, when you say...
I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational.
Of course, it was inelegant. That was an inelegant way to put it. And perhaps he was good. Like I said, when people are on social media, when people make money from social media, they say things that they know are going to trigger people, and people are going to get upset and come and watch the video, and that brings eyes to the video, and that's views, and that's money in your pocket. So being controversial is profitable. So we can't put too much stake on what someone says who profits from what they say on social media. The fact of the matter is, if America must fall, they have to take the guns. They have to. Because when the government is on some bullshit and when they start with the foolishness, how are you going to resist? If they send the military out on you, what do you have to fight the military? Your two hands? You can't bring a hand, you can't bring fist to a gunfight. You can't do that. And they know, because we have had, I think it was 1776 in the United States of America. We have had an American Revolution before. And that is why the Second Amendment is there. To protect the citizens from that's the only thing. And people saying, oh, Trump is a dictator. He can't be a dictator while you have your guns. He cannot be a dictator while you have your guns. So what do? We go back to the false flag events. We go back to the red herring. We go back to the patsy. We go back to the Hegelian dialectic. Problem, reaction, solution. If they want to take your guns, what is the most effective way to get people to voluntarily give up their guns? The shootings. And they appeal to emotion. So they come on the TV, and every station that you turn, there is one of these puppets, these marionettes. On TV, CNN, NBC, Fox News, CBS, CNN, telling you, oh my God, we need to take the guns because they just shut up a school with some 12-year-olds. So Charlie Kirk got shot and killed. And what do you think is going to happen now? Emotions are high. And people are going to say, see, we need to take the guns. So there is one supposition that this is another false flag event to induce the Americans to give up their guns. There's another theory. Charlie spoke out about Israel. And we know anyone who speaks about Israel either end up getting cancelled or cancelled.
How did these guys not know this was taking place?
So I've been to Israel many times. The whole country is a fortress. When I first heard this story, I still had the same gut instinct that I did initially. I find this very hard to believe. I've been to that Gaza border. You cannot go 10 feet without running into a 19-year-old with an AR-15 or an automatic machine gun that is an IDF soldier. Right? The whole country is surveilled.
So people are saying he spoke out against Israel, and this is Israel at work. This is the end result. So that is another theory. Another theory is that he was a sacrificial lamb of the sitting president to enact his agenda. So he wants to go to war against, I don't know, because one of the pundits on, I think it was MSN.
They are at war with us. Whether we want to accept it or not, they are at war with us. And what are we going to do about it? How much political violence are we going to tolerate? And that's the question we're just going to have to ask ourselves. Now, Charlie would want us to put as much pressure on these people as possible. Dana nailed it. This is unacceptable and has to stop. And it has to stop now. And everybody's accountable. And we're watching what they're saying on television and who's saying what. The politicians, the media, and all these rats out there. This can never happen again. It ends now. Greg's right again. This is a turning point, and we know which direction we're going.
The question is, who are they? And how they have not caught the assassin, because there's no footage showing that there was a guy on the building across from where Charlie was speaking, and he was running. So they're assuming that it was a trained assassin that killed Charlie. But he has not been caught. So how are you on the news saying that they are at war? And the they that he's referencing is the left. And this is what they are. These are violent people. Is it? But you don't know who the killer is. So how do you jump to the conclusion that they are at war with us? And you don't know why the shooter shot Charlie, because you haven't caught the shooter. You have no idea who this person is. You have no idea what their affiliations are. So how do you then jump to the conclusion that they are at war with us and yada yada yada? And now, basically saying that essentially it's all of them, the politicians and the media pundits, are at risk. And I want to say that these people do not understand the responsibility that they have. Well, I think they do, but they are agents of the system. Agents of the cabal, if you will. Agents of the technocratic elite who is trying to bring in this one world government and surveillance state. If you watch the Minority Report, you'll get an understanding of what exactly that they're trying to accomplish, and then the end result of that would be what we see happen in the Hunger Games. So they're trying to bring in this Hunger Games society where they are, sitting in their palaces and enjoying the finest of life, while the rest of us are fighting for the scraps for their entertainment. And I know it sounds bizarre, but if you listen to, is it the CEO of Palantir, Peter, like they are literally saying these things, So when you hear someone else say it, it sounds crazy, but they have actually done interviews, they have actually, in their own words, make suggestions or indications that this is what they believe and this is what they want. And in order to get there, they have to manufacture problems for us to give up our rights, give up our freedoms, give up our liberties to this benevolent state, hoping that, the government is going to fix all the problems and make everything better, only to realize that they're literally, the wolf in sheep's clothing. So I don't see America is too poor. I think it's going to fall. I think they're going to bring out this technocratic one world government, because people are just too divided and too stupid to recognize, what's really going on. And it's not until their backs are against the wall, the proverbial wall, that people will act. And this time, with technology and robotics and just weaponry and armament, I don't see how we can fight back without getting slaughtered. Because most countries in the world, the people are unarmed. So how are you going to fight back against a armed military? Because make no mistake, the military most of them are brainwashed. If the government orders them to go out and kill people, they're just going to do that. Of course, you're going to have one and two who will stand down or whatever. Because if you talk to anybody in the military right now who have done tours of duty overseas, they'll tell you, it's some bullshit. Like, why are we in these countries killing people? It doesn't make any sense, but they do it anyway. So what do you think when you have this cabal who wants to introduce this new world order and hoard us into these 15-minute cities and have us in this kind of Hunger Games society where we are just fighting for scraps, like the savages they believe that we are. How do we get from where we are now to that place? That's the question. Like, what would a nefarious entity who wants to bring us into this technocratic age, into this Hunger Games society, what would they have to do? Because they can't force us into a technocratic society, into a Hunger Games. They can't force us into a... So we have to walk willingly. It's like a mouse trap. You put the cheese on the trap and you induce the mouse to come and get the cheese. And as soon as he holds the cheese, the trap is sprung and is caught. So these mass shootings, these, that you see the news, and then there is also another theory that, because remember the Epstein, people were on Donald Trump like, okay, there's this thing that came out with you writing a letter to Jeffrey Epstein and whatever. I don't know if that is true, but I saw it and there was a signature. They were, and then all of a sudden Charlie Kirk.
The documents are contained in a book compiled by Ghislaine Maxwell for Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday back in 2003. One letter has typewritten words framed by a hand-drawn outline of a woman's naked body, which appears to be signed below the waist by Donald Trump. The text wishes Epstein a happy birthday, and then it adds, "May every day be another wonderful secret." Now, Donald Trump has always denied having anything to do with the letter, which he says is a fake.
Another distraction. So now people forget about not people forget about it, but the news now, the news cycle is now flooded with, oh my God, they're at war against us, they just murdered Charlie Kirk. So we forget about the Epstein file. We forget about all the stuff that is going on there. We forget about what Israel is doing, bombing these places. Because now Charlie Kirk has been shot. This is how they get us. Once we are onto something, they create a situation. They create a situation. And they're going to find a fall guy. The real assassin is not going to be found. They're going to find some fall guy to say, oh, this is the person who did it. And he's going to go to jail and we're going to forget about it. The people who are celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, listen, if you do not want your opinions to be challenged, then they're not worth having in the first place. If I cannot defend what I believe, then obviously I don't know why I believe what I believe. That's the problem. Of course, we have to be responsible in our utterances. And I think that there were some things that Charlie was saying that leave a bitter taste in your mouth. But we have to look at it within the context of this is a social media influencer who has a wife and kid and need to feed his family. And this is content. And controversy brings in money. The more viral I can be, whether it is for the good, whether it's for fame or infamy, it's still money in my pocket. And we see a lot of people doing a lot of crazy stuff on social media for likes and views. And we have to understand that some of the things that he was saying had to be because he knew it was going to cause anger and outrage. And that is going to get people to go watch the video and complain about it and fight about it in the comment section and share it and split it and put it all over the place. And that is money in his pocket. We can't be so disconnected from how the world operates now in 2025. We can't. Much of what we see is content. It's not reality. So to be here rejoicing over someone that, as far as I know, he wasn't in any position. This is what you do to leaders who are enacting laws that are detrimental to people. Just like what we see happen in Nepal, where the government was on some bullshit and the people burned down the parliament. Because what the government was doing affected their lives. Charlie Kirk going around and spewing some bullshit is just a guy on the internet talking crap. Killing him, what does that change? It doesn't do anything. It doesn't. But if a politician passes some bullshit law in your state and you kill them, then that now says to the next politician, I have to tread water carefully. Otherwise, I could be next. So you make a difference there. But I don't think that this killing was just some random person who was upset with Charlie. I think this was another Hegelian dialectic in play, where it serves a multitude of purposes. One, it heightens emotion around getting rid of the Second Amendment. They want to take the guns, and they're going to take your guns by any means necessary. So you're going to have a lot of maybe they start killing kids because that's really the one that gets people. So maybe you have more mass shootings involving children because they want to take the guns and they have 5 years to do it, because come 2030, come hell or high water, we have to have this one world government, this new world order, and this Hunger Games society, right? So they're gonna crank up the heat. They probably start a world war, right? To I don't know, to get us closer to that new one world government, right? So the shooting, I believe it was a trained assassin, either paid for by a government, either Charlie's own government or the other one influencing the United States of America. And it served several purposes. One, to reignite tensions around gun violence and disarming Americans. Because Americans don't understand that, like, they're advocating for their own demise, and it is one of the most vexing thing to watch. Like you can't stop gun violence by taking guns from everybody. You can't. If somebody wants to kill somebody, they're gonna get a gun. Unless there are no guns in the world, people are, because in my country we don't manufacture guns, and we have the highest and sometimes the second highest murder per capita in the region, and we don't make guns here, and citizens don't have a right to bear arms. And people are being murdered. Just 2 days ago, there was a standoff between one guy and the whole police force for about 5 hours in Jamaica. We don't make guns here. Where did he get the gun from? And I'm sure he didn't get it the legal way. I am sure of that. And there was thousands of rounds of ammunition that he had. That's not legal. So disarming citizens doesn't stop the violence. People who want a gun will get a gun. Come hell or high water, they're just going to get it on the black market. It's just that simple. It just means that the only difference is that law-abiding citizens just won't have a way of protecting themselves. That's what people don't. Law-abiding citizens just won't have a way of protecting themselves. But if somebody wants to go shoot up a school, they're going to get the gun and go shoot up a school, whether or not you have the right to bear arms. Because the law doesn't stop people from doing. That's why you have courts and prison. Because people will break the law. It's just that simple. And if they're caught, they go to jail. So I just, like, the logic does not make any sense. The government wants your gun. You need to ask yourself, why do they want the guns? You think they care about school shootings? They don't. They do not care about you. They don't care about school shootings. They don't. So if they're asking for your guns, it has to be a self-serving purpose. And the question you need to ask is, why does the government want to take our guns? If you act out of emotion, oh my God, they shoot up a church with 12, with kids in there, and you're like, take the guns. Because that's what they want. That is what they want. They either manufacture these events, or when they happen, they capitalize on it and say, see, you need to give up the guns. Because if we didn't have guns, if we didn't have the Second Amendment, this would never have happened. Says who? Look at countries where the citizens don't have a right to bear arms. Are they still being killed by guns? Where America is a sick society. So the reason why you have mass shootings and stabbings is because people are fucking sick in the head. It's just that simple. It's not, so you have a mentally ill society. If you don't fix that, you're not going to get rid of the violence. People are sick. People are sick in the head. Here in Jamaica, when someone dies, when someone is killed by a gun, you can almost, it's not just somebody don't just get up and just go kill somebody. That doesn't happen here. It's always stemming from something. You can always get to a motive as to why. It's not like we don't have mass shootings. It's not that we can't, because there are people here with enough guns and ammunition to just go shoot up a school or shoot up a workplace or shoot up. People have the means to do it, even though we don't have the right to be. They can do, but we don't, because we're not fucking crazy. A lot of Americans are sick in their fucking head. That's the problem. You have a sick society. And it is deliberately done to you guys. You're being deliberately made mentally ill and sick and obese. All of that is being done to you by your government. So the problem is not gun violence. You have a sick society and you need to fix it. And I think you need another revolution. Because what happens is that when a society, you'll start out good. So you had this 1776 and, people are on their P's and their Q's, blah, blah, and now they've gotten, it's kind of like, well, we can do whatever we want. You look at the Supreme Court, and it's like these judges are not following the Constitution. Get rid of them. All of them. By whatever means you deem fit. Because unfortunately, the only thing that you can that can get a government in line, that can get a government to come back to being a servant of the people, is violence. There is no other way. There is no country that you can look to in past, present, or no, well, in the past or no, where the people were dissatisfied with something and they had this peaceful discussion and this peaceful debate and there was this democratic process and the government acquiesced. It doesn't happen. It does not happen. It's the only thing that can get them to, if you look at how America operates, what do? They use violence or threat of violence to get what they want. It's never about diplomacy. Because even when they send an envoy somewhere to have talks, that envoy goes there to let them know that, listen, we will bring down the full force of the United States of America on your ass if you don't do what we're saying. And they'll start by sanctions or whatever. You see them do it all the time to let them know this is what we're gonna do first, just to show you that we can do it. We're gonna start with this, and that's how they get their way. If they want something in a country, they just go and they take it by force. They don't ask for that shit. They don't pay. If they decide I'm not gonna pay for that, they just come in and they take it. Because what are you gonna do about it? The only thing that the news, the politicians, the judges, if you look at how these people operate, they operate as if they are above us. So what goes for us don't go for them. They can do whatever they want. You can't. And there's no reasoning with them because they have gotten to such a state of disillusion that they believe that they're the lords and master over us. And it's everywhere in the world. So talking won't get you anywhere. They pretend to listen, but then they laugh at you when your back is turned. Because it's like, who the hell is this guy? Can you get a load of this guy? The only thing that they understand is violence. Unfortunately, what happened to Charlie Kirk, as I said, I believe it was a false flag event. I sincerely believe it was a false flag event. It served the purpose. One, Israel got rid of him because he was speaking against Israel. And it so happened to distract from the Jeffrey Epstein file. And it so happened so you kill 3 birds with 1 stone. It reignites tensions and emotions around gun violence and gun control. This was not some random people in the crowd who was just fed up with Charlie Kirk's bullshit and decided to shoot him. I don't believe that shit. This was a false flag event. The Galilean dialectic in play. We create the problem, the people react to it, and we come with a solution. And now they're going to maybe they probably want to come up with hate speech laws again, because of course they have to police what people say, because if you are free to say what you want to say, then you have the ability to influence others and break them out of their psychosis and break them out of their echo chamber and break the mass formation that you're trying to break through the propaganda. So we have to police speech.
We will continue to be your single source of truth. We will provide information frequently. We will share everything we can, everything else you see, a grain of salt. So I continue to share the message. New Zealanders must prepare, but do not panic, prepare. And when you see those messages, remember that unless you hear it from us, it is not the truth.
So when you silence dissenting voices, then, because in order for a dictatorship to come into play, truth has to be the first casualty. You have to get rid of dissenters. You have to get rid of people who are sounding the alarm, who are waking people up, who are bringing people's attention to what is happening. You have to get rid of those people or silence those voices. Otherwise, your plan is not going to come into fruition. So the question that Americans need to ask themselves is, why is the government trying to take our guns? Look at your society. Does it look like a society that the government cares about? Because if it does, then they do care about you. They want to stop the gun violence, so they want to take the guns from you. If you look at the society, they're arresting people for being homeless. They have vagrancy laws. How are you going to arrest somebody for being homeless? They're putting stuff on the benches so that nobody can sleep on the benches. Make that make sense. We see them now rounding up people. They said they were going after the criminals and the this and that who are illegal immigrants, and you see they're going to people who have their legitimate jobs, who have been in the country for 20 years, 10 years, 15 years, and why are you not going for the criminals? That's what you said you were going to do. So look at your country. Look at how the state of the country now. And ask yourself, does this look like a country that is being run by a government that cares about us? And if the answer is no, then the next question you should be asking yourself, why do they want to take our guns? As I close out this video, as I said before, America must fall in order for the new world order to take shape. And the only way they're going to get rid of you suckers is if they take your guns. You can feel however way you want to feel about the mass shoots, the mass shootings and whatever the case may be. Most of these are false flag events. And if they are just random acts of violence, the media capitalize on that to further push the narrative. It's a problem reaction solution modality that is being used where they manufacture crises, manufacture events, or capitalize on crises and events that happen, randomly, to push forward their narrative, to steer you, to get you to react in a certain way, so that they can come now with their pre-planned solution to tell you what to do. And the direction that they're leading you towards is your own demise. Having said that, I am writing a book now about that. It centers around central bank digital currency and how that will be used to bring in this kind of surveillance state where everybody's being surveyed all the time. It's partially happening now, but it is not to the draconian extent, because right now we're still using cash and most transactions are private, but they're pushing for this surveillance state and this one world government where all of us are under the dictates, on the watchful eye of AI 24/7, 365, and there can be no dissenting voices, just like what happened in Oceania in George Orwell's 1984. So, at the end of the day, it is up to us to decide the kind of society that we want to live in. It is up to us to open our eyes and our ears to what is happening in our society and be able to determine and discern fact from fiction. And with that said, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this discourse, and I will see you in the next video.